So in today's podcast, The View from the Top, I've got Matt Ropchak. He's the president of Orveda US. He's been at General Mills a lot of his career, and he's been kind of a local leader that has done some pretty amazing things, but has also learned some really amazing lessons. I don't want to spoil it, but he shares something personally that happened to him. It's actually how he and I got connected, because I had a similar thing happen in my family, and he shares just how that shifted his perspective on leadership, on what's important. He has a lesson about don't keep your feet in the familiar. Like, where are you stretching? Where are you kind of pushing yourself to do something that you don't know how to do? And I think for a lot of us, we get comfortable and we're not disrupting ourselves as often as maybe we should be. And so I love the lessons that Matt shares. I love some of the things that have happened on his success, on his climb, as we talk about that a lot of us deal with. How is he looking at life differently as he goes forward? This is a do not miss episode. There was points where I teared up just because I know his story. I know how impactful it is for many of us. So make sure and take a listen. And if you know someone in your life that needs to hear this message, please, the greatest thing you can do for Matt or I is to share this podcast episode, to share it with people in your network, to share it with people you love. I think it's a gift when we do that for people. So I hope you like it in this next View from the Top. Welcome, everybody, to the View from the Top podcast. I've got Matt Ropchak with me. He's the president of Orveda US. And Matt and I'm going to say how we met. He posted something on LinkedIn, and I'm not even sure how I saw it. My family had gone through something similar that he had gone through in his life, which I'm sure he's going to share with us today. And I just reached out cold and said, I appreciate you posting this, and would you ever meet for coffee? And you're like, sure, crazy lady, I'll meet you. So we just had such a wonderful conversation that I was like, I want your story to be shared, because I think it could really reframe some things for leaders, especially just the way our world is, and help us kind of prioritize what's important, which I think you've learned and you're good at. So thank you for being here. And if you'd kick us off with just who are you, right? How'd you get to this point in your success? What's that journey been?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks first of all for having me on the show, Jaime. That quirky way we met was fine with me. I meet a lot of people that way, and I was glad you reached out to have coffee, and we got a chance to connect, and then to do this together. Yeah, a little bit about myself. So, as you mentioned, I currently run the U.S. portion of a business called Orveda. They're a global CDMO, so they do development, and they ultimately do manufacturing for companies that want to sell mostly nutritional supplements. So like all the capsules and tablets and gummies and stick packs that are so popular these days, we make those in the US, in the UK, in Europe, and in China. And then also some health and beauty products. I've been with this company 2 years. Prior to that, I was at General Mills, so a local Twin Cities company, for 27 years. I grew up doing a lot of engineering and operational stuff in my career before I moved to kind of the small company environment I'm in now. And during that time, I had a chance to be an expat in Europe for a few years, which was a really terrific experience. And I also worked internationally in the Canadian business of General Mills along the way. So lots of diverse things in the back.
But, and when people would step back and say, you know, I know Matt, or I've known him from the beginning, and they kind of see your trajectory of climbing the ranks at General Mills and, you know, becoming president of a company out of that, what's one thing that maybe they would misunderstand about that success? Because from the outside, sometimes it looks like everything's gone according to plan. Right? What's something people know about that climb?
Yeah, it's there was really one pivotal point or segment in my career that stands out, Jaime. After a kind of a restructuring event in the company, I was moved from the role I was in Europe, which was kind of an operations and engineering leader, into a supply chain leader role. And they made 5 of these positions across the company, and I got one of them, leading the Canadian business. And the lesson here was, as I reflected back on this later, was I didn't keep a foot in the familiar. And what I mean by that is I was moving geographies. So moving from Europe back to North America. I was moving cultures. So I was kind of used to European culture for the last 3 years, and then I was moving to Canadian culture specifically. I was changing functions. So I was in the engineering function. I was going to the supply chain one, and then I was going from a technical leader role to a business leader role. I sat on the business leadership team for this Canadian business, and I was responsible for end-to-end supply chain in the post-pandemic era, which, as you probably remember, was a little bit hectic. Mm-hmm. I had massive imposter syndrome at the time. I didn't know what I didn't know in some cases. And it was a bit unnerving. I remember working, 12, 13-hour days every day just to try to learn so I could make a decision when every day was about making decisions.
Right.
It was a tough time. And I think what I did to get through that was I just had to admit it to myself first that, okay, I just don't know. Right. And that led me to, I need to be okay with asking questions and learning. And the best thing I did through that whole period, Jamie, was I remember it was probably maybe 9 months or a year into the role. We had kind of a mid-year meeting, and I was up in front of the team, and I kind of pivoted in the moment. And I was kind of looking at faces as I was talking. We were at an offsite thing. We were about to go do some kind of fun activity. And I went away from the business update, and I was like, you know what? I got to share something with everybody here. When I came into this job, I had no idea how to do, I didn't even know what customer operations was. Like the portion of our business interacts with customers and, extracts demand and does order processing and things like that. And people are kind of like, what? And I wanted them to know that not understanding was okay. And some of the other people in the room had just come in and they were in this post-pandemic area and they were afraid to shut their laptops on the weekends for fear of missing a critical email. And I said, you know what? It's okay not to be able to do everything and not to know everything. Your leader's standing up here telling you this. And it was a nice 5 or 10 minute conversation. And people came up to me afterwards and said, nobody ever says stuff like that. Nobody ever admitted to us they didn't know how to do something. And I kind of in that moment realized that just being vulnerable like that was really a powerful tool as a leader.
Right. And I think it's a powerful tool for you to heal as well, right? I mean, I think part of that is like you step into that who you are, but it's the authentic piece that comes forward and modeling that behavior and admitting. And I think it's one of the beauties of the pandemic and some of the uncertainty and chaos is nobody knows how to lead through some of this chaos that we're in right now. We're figuring it out. Right? We're leaning on our leadership skills and we're not leaning on domain expertise for 15 years like we used to be able to. And I think that's refreshing for people to hear, especially as I think about my 4 Gen Z, right? College age, coming out of college, to hear from leaders that like your job is to figure it out, ask good questions, be a good teammate, right? Work together. Like it's not to know all of the answers because there aren't answers to some of the things we're dealing with right now.
Exactly. That experience, as good as it was to teach me, it ultimately revealed that I wasn't really a rock star in that role. Kind of like my career had been characterized by kind of being a high performer in the company. And ultimately it led to, there was another riff that happened a couple years into it and I didn't end up with a seat. And I can look back at that and say, not having that foot in the familiar put me into a place of pretty extreme risk in terms of to be able to do the job. I mean, I learned a massive amount, but I really wasn't performing the way I could have been. And I went into job transition and did all that self-worth evaluation stuff that everybody does when you get to that spot. But the hard things are what make you better. And I came through that and got to a better place. And it led to the job opportunity I have now, which is fantastic. And I love it. So at the end of the day, it was worth it.
Yeah. So you would do it again?
I would. Oh boy, I just got a crook from the 2 years of supply chain mayhem that we had, but yeah, probably I would.
Well, you would tell someone, a younger leader, right, to like that. Don't keep your feet completely in the familiar. Yeah, that other side can also hold you back.
Absolutely, and if you think about things that I wish somebody would have told me earlier in my career, that's exactly one of them. That. I would tell people they're, in the first years or so of their career to just get as much perspective in as many roles as you can. Disrupt yourself often would be my advice. And, you're a year and a half, 2 years into your role, raise your hand and say, I want to change jobs. And it might just feel like you're just hitting your groove, but that's the time when you're starting to coast a little bit and you're not pushing yourself to learn as much. I mean, I'm the president of a business now. I've never worked in sales. It would have been not too much of a stretch in the first few years of my career to say, hey, can I go do a cross-functional role in sales? Just, sales operations or something, just so I get a sense of what this is about. And I'll come back to being a technical person, but I want to understand how that business works. That would have been super helpful as I step into this role now. So I've had to learn into that space, into that function quite a bit later in my career, when you're the leader, it's a little harder to do that learning.
We're seeing actually more of our clients that are creating, I would call them rotational programs in leadership, meaning you're not going to get to the C-suite, right, or to the higher levels by the career ladder anymore. We need you to go to ops and spend some time in sales, and because you're a better executive leader, right, if you've had that well-rounded. And so I think me growing up at Cargill, General Mills, that just wasn't how they thought, right? Necessarily. Like you kind of had a path.
Yeah, you kind of stayed in your lane, in your function.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a disservice now, because I think you have executives who maybe are a little functional, you know, and that they have silos because they understand really deep what they do, but not what the business does.
I've been able to get by because I learn things really fast and I pick up on them quickly, but it's not always sufficient. And certainly for people that don't do that, I mean, I think the cross-functional roles are really necessary.
Yeah. When you think about, you know, the journey you shared and kind of how you've gotten to where you've gotten, obviously job transition was a key moment, probably a perspective shift. Was there another moment where from the outside world, you know, maybe it looked like you had it all together and, you know, behind the scenes, it wasn't going quite as planned, or things that really disrupted you?
I don't know how it looked from the outside, but internally, at least, you know, I feel like I really had to evolve how I approached my career as I got into higher levels of leadership. And I don't think you admit that to people readily, and people don't always see that, but you feel it as a leader. And, you know, what got me here was that, I learned things fast and I can make decisions quickly and I can solve problems and I can lead operations. But now I'm faced with, I got to lead an organization. I got to set a vision. I got to inspire people. I got to transform a business to make sure I hit the bottom line for a bunch of investors and private equity. And, you know, that wasn't in the playbook, in the instruction. So you need to move past how you used to do things as you get into these higher levels of leadership positions. And I guess what I've learned that I need to do more of now, and I need to focus on more as I've gotten to this place, which probably isn't obvious from the outside, but you coach more and you do less, right? You know that old adage of teach people to fish, right? You got to teach them how to be the problem solvers, not be the problem solver yourself. A good example of that at the workplace here is my operations director and I do Gemba walks with the team. So that basically go and see the event, but along the way we're kind of demonstrating the behavior of these are the questions you need to ask your leads and your operators to make sure that they're completing tasks, to make sure that the things that make this business run efficiently are being done. And in a business that was founder-led for a long time, everybody was just told what to do. You know, they didn't know to go do these things on their own and to drive outcomes. So that was an example of coaching and teaching. And a second thing on that list is prioritization. And this one I think is kind of funny because you talk about this all through your career and you do it all the time, but you just can't fix everything, Jamie. I mean, right. I remember having a job interview for a company I won't name, but while I was in transition, and the guy said to me, he's like, I just want to make sure you're somebody that knows how to walk past some of the fires that we have burning. And I was like, well, that's a really interesting way to think about it. But, you know, you got to think, what can I let burn down so that something else can move forward is really what you have to do as a leader. It's kind of the essence of brutal prioritization. And I didn't, you know, I'm kind of internally conflicted sometimes because I like to put out fires. That's what I was raised to do. I carried the hose around so long. That's all I knew. And now I think I've evolved to this place where I rely a lot on character, for lack of a better term. So when I left General Mills, I had an experience early in my career where somebody told me, you need to know what your brand is, Matt. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Where was it?
I have one of those.
I don't think I have one. Yeah. Where do I buy that? Yeah. And it wasn't until the last week of work with the company, I sent an email out to, you know, everybody I'd worked with that touched me in some way, and just kind of, you know, job by job almost. I probably got 80 replies to those messages. And people use words like, you know, here's what you meant to me in this moment, or here's what you taught me, or gosh, you were always an authentic person and you were so genuine. And those words popped out a lot. And I just realized that that's how I came across to people. And it was a bit of my brand. You know, it turns out you don't have to die and have a eulogy for people to tell you this. You can leave a company too, and they say you meant to them from a brand point of view. But that's one part of what my character is about now is that authenticity. And another part is connecting and showing that I care about people, so that I really want to foster a do it for me, not do it because you're afraid of me environment, right? I mean, you don't manage by making people scared and fearful of the jobs. You manage by building a lot of trust. And they want to go to battle with you, right? And that's the environment I want to create nowadays.
I love it. I call it legacy leadership, right? Where there's ripple effects that you and I may never know from ways that we led. And we hope those are positive. Most of them, more positive than negative.
Yeah.
But I was speaking to a CEO forum last week, and I was telling a story from my early days at Cargill and a leader that still to this day I think about and the impact she had on me. And when I told the story, I mean, people were like, "You're tear," because they know that feeling, they know that person. And I said, "Isn't that at the end of the day what we all just want? Right? We want someone to be talking about us down the road about this leader had this impact or this person had this impact. It doesn't even have to be a leader."
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as leaders, we forget that that's a big part of our role because we're supposed to drive execution and hit outcomes and measurables and right. We're supposed to do all those things too, but we're also supposed to create an impact on the business and on the people. I think that's what you're talking about throughout your career. And I know a little bit about, your story and, talk about the moment, talk about that event that really changed everything, because I think this is so important as we talk about the health, mental, physical, right? And what it means to be a leader and how to really make sure that is a priority. So will you share as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the listening audience, Jamie's not talking about job transition this time. He's talking about a health event I had. I had an experience that most people don't get to have. I spent an hour in a way many people don't, and I spent it dead. I had a heart attack on December 27th of 2024. It was interesting. I began the day like I begin most days. I did a workout in the morning. My workout ended because I had some strange back pain. I remember making the kids some lunch. It was just after Christmas, and last thing I remember was sitting on a couch. And then the next memory I have after that was I woke up in a hospital room, surrounded by people in masks, all staring at me, not knowing what's going on. And I thought what any sane person would think at that point, that, oh my God, they're about to harvest my kidneys. Please help me. It was just a strange set of occurrences. So the blanks got filled in later were that as I sat on that couch, I started having what my wife told me I described as somebody stabbing me in the back with a spear type of pain. And my arm went numb. And I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. We should go to the emergency room. And we did that. We got to within maybe a half mile or so of the Ridgeview Clinic in Chanhassen area, Charchaska area. And I went unconscious. And I arrived at the door, and a large nurse named Clay came out, dragged me out of the car. When my shoes fell off, he threw me on a stretcher, and he jumped up out of the stretcher and started doing CPR as they wheeled me down to one of the rooms. And I was in there a long time. They had the chest compression machine on me, trying to keep me alive. The attending ER, Dr. Matthew White, was trying to get hold of Abbott Northwestern Hospital to have him take me over to get a procedure done. And they kept saying, well, we're not going to take it because he doesn't have a pulse. About 30 minutes into that, Dr. White said, I went to the waiting room and your wife was sitting praying, holding your shoe that had fallen off while they dragged you out of the car. I was about to tell her we were going to give up, and I didn't have the heart to interrupt her. So I went back and we worked on you some more, and it was about 45 minutes in now, and I was going to tell him to stop again, and the phone rang, and it was Abbott, and he had a conversation with them, and they said I hung up the phone, and right after I hung up the phone, they said we have a pulse, and then I got whisked away in an ambulance. I got sent over to Abbott, and they put 2 stents in my LAD, your widowmaker artery in my heart. On Friday night, I was in ICU for 2 days. And then I woke up on Sunday night to the kidney harvesting. Was the next event, but they saved my life. Pretty unusual set of circumstances, but I was less than 1% survival odds is what I understand.
I haven't really shared this on the podcast because it's still a little new, but not to the extent that you did. But my husband suffered a heart attack in January, and I rode in the ambulance watching him slowly deteriorate, and your life flashes before your eyes. So I can put myself in your wife's position in the lonely waiting room, having no idea, and waiting for the doctors to come out. And there's trauma on both sides, right? What you went through and what your wife went, what your loved ones go through as well. And it really shifts. And so this is why I had reached out to Matt and just said, okay, unfortunately, I've had my own experience and just navigating that. So that's what I want to talk about is like, when you come out of that and life, is colored differently, right? Like the things you experience and the things that maybe feel important and didn't before, or vice versa. Like how do you navigate that kind of a shift in identity? And what's been the beauty of something very traumatic, right? What has that done for you as you look at your path forward from here?
I think it's a catalyst. Maybe is the word I think of. And, much like, if you relate this to what people go through maybe in job transition, similar type of catalyst, I think I can draw analogies between the two. So what I talk to people a lot that are going through job changes, you really got to rethink what you want, right? And not so much what you did or what you can do, but really what you want to do. And when I went through a job transition, somebody said to me along the way, "So Matt, you're a food guy, right?" And I was like, gosh, I thought I was an operations guy. So it's really interesting perspective that you have, that just because I worked at General Mills, that's how I'm characterized. Yeah. It made me think, I don't want to work in food anymore. I want to work in something else. And I started looking at my resume as this puzzle with missing pieces and what do I want to fill in and that type of thing. I think the heart attack similarly was a catalyst to just, first and foremost, just have a greater appreciation for life and finding what truly makes you happy. So what do you want in life? Right. I think what I took away from both of those kind of life-changing experiences, if you will, along the way, one more so than the other, was that work-life balance for me is finding my want in both those spaces. All right. So personally, I want to live longer. I'm into, I make supplements and now I started taking a lot of, but I can relate to these longevity ideas, and I've inspired to be healthier in terms of what I eat and what I put in my body. Garbage in equals garbage inside is definitely one of the mantras I live by. Yeah. And I'm big into exercise. I was doing exercise on the day I had the heart attack, and I continue to do it. And some days I wake up and think, God, I really want to do this. And then I think, God, I really want to live longer. And I go do it. And that's a personal thing for me. But professionally, I'm still looking for those missing pieces. And what I hope all those missing pieces in my resume and in my career lead me to ultimately is, I guess, leaving a legacy for people. Right. That's probably what I want to, I want to be remembered for the legacy I leave in the places I get to work.
I heard of me in this, I can say this to you, but part of the gift is at an earlier age, right? Versus at 80, having this like mortality. It's like you get to have it and you get to reframe your life now. Yeah. And the guidance I would give to people listening, that whether you're going through something hard or is that you have that opportunity before the hard thing happens. Yeah. And I think so many of us wait for the catalyst to do it, like you talked about. How would you suggest, like looking back, right, on a leader that's listening, that's like maybe going through the hard, maybe it's not that big of a catalyst. It's not enough to shift their perspective. What guidance would you give them on how do you do this before the bad thing happens, before the life-changing thing happens?
Well, from a health perspective, it's pretty easy. Maybe I'll give an example of that first, but there's plenty of things people can do to kind of counteract the way that a lot of medicine today is very reactive in nature. So our medical system is designed to fix something that's broken, not to prevent it from breaking. So I've worked in operations my whole career. We do something called preventive maintenance. So you lubricate it or you check it, you make sure that it doesn't fall apart, because if it falls apart when it's intended to be used, like your art, then you're going to be in a bad spot. So you can get scans, you can get blood work, you can just ask your doctor, hey, I think I might have something wrong, or I'm worried that I might have something serious wrong with my heart because I'm, in my late 40s, early 50s when these problems start to manifest. What would you recommend I do? And they'll have ideas. And some of these things are like $50 blood tests. I mean, would you invest $50 to maybe know if you've got lipoprotein A, like I do, which affects 10 or 20% of the people in the world, and it causes cholesterol buildup faster than it would be if you didn't have it. That's a pretty good thing to know. All right. I mean, and it's not too much invested time for that. And maybe on the career side, I'd say a lot of times I reflect and I find that what really seems impossible in the moment isn't so bad when you look back at it. In hindsight, you just have to get to hindsight. So
I love that.
How do you get to hindsight quicker, right, and more proactively? Could be the analogy in the career world of like, how do you see around those corners and anticipate what's coming a bit better, and just be better at asking the questions and learning of what might be ahead, instead of having to get there and feeling the pain.
And also knowing that you've gotten to hindsight all the other times. You'll get through this too, right? You'll get to it. It's kind of that when you're in the middle of it, you don't have to know the answer. It can still feel kind of crappy, but you'll get to the other side.
Yeah, you just have to believe you'll get there. And when you look back, you'll think it really wasn't that bad.
Right. Throughout your career and everything that's happened personally, professionally, is there a belief, a mindset, it was something that you had to unlearn to become the leader that you are today?
We talked about that a little bit earlier. I do think it's rooted in just giving up the doing and starting the leading.
Where your value and your worth comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really a mindset shift to rejigger the way that you approach your work. You've got to create the next set of leaders, the next set of capable people. I mean, certainly there's an element of bringing and having around you the right talent. But when you have that right talent, you can certainly misuse them. You could be somebody that micromanages. You can work for a leader like that was really challenging for me. Or you can be somebody that inspires, guides, creates this vision, and then people want to go to battle for you, and they want to win with you. And there's somebody asked me a few weeks ago, why do you keep doing this? And it was on a really bad day. It was like a bad week.
Yep.
Like, you know what? I just like to see you and the rest of the team experience a win, right? I like that you get that satisfaction. I like that I get to do it with you, right? I mean, that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah.
That's what kind of fuels the fire every day. But leading in a way that makes that happen is really the key. So I kind of had to give up, well, let me go out there and help you solve a problem, versus maybe I ask the right couple questions that make them think how to solve the problem for themselves, right? That's what I try to spend more time doing. And I never want to be, and this is still hard to do, but it's like we got to make a decision in a meeting, and it's like I don't want to say, well, I think, until the absolute end, because once I say that, I've influenced the outcome. Right? I want to say instead, hey, Joe Smith, I haven't heard from you. What's your opinion? Or does anybody have a different opinion? One of the things that really shaped my career was this expat role, where I worked over in Switzerland for 3 years, and I thought I was hot stuff, right? I'm an expat, and I talk to these people. I'm like, well, have you ever been an expat? And they're like, yeah, this is my 6th assignment. I've worked in Africa and in Asia and South America and Europe. And I'm like, oh, so your perspective is a little broader than mine. Right. But I learned to value that diversity in opinion, and that just the differences in culture and how they approach things. And I want to draw that out of my team now, of like, who thinks this idea isn't good? Like, give me a counter opinion. Because once I say, well, here's what I think we should do, then everybody just, okay, hands off.
And you don't get the best idea, because the best idea,
you shut down the conversation. So that's another way that you need to.
How do you, if I said 10 years ago versus now, how do you define success? Personally and professionally, all in one. What is that? How is that different than 10 years ago?
Well, it's definitely about what we talked about early, legacy. I want it to be about like who I helped grow, 2 or 3 mountains that got moved in working with the team, right? It's like, wow, before Matt was with us and working with us, we didn't do it this way, and then we got to this place. I'd love for people to say that, and I'd love to experience that with them, that we did that together. But maybe a legacy of just value that's felt in the future, leaving people with like, they really enjoyed the experience of working with me and learning from me, right? If people said that, I'd be completely honored, and felt like that was the best thing that could have come out from that work experience.
Reminds me of the Chinese proverb that, planting trees that you'll never know the shade of.
That's
right. It's that generational leadership of having your fingerprints right on things that'll grow and beyond you or anything you could have expected. And
it's not a boastful, prideful place where that comes from, but it's like legacy is a pretty specific word, right? Like you're remembered for something that people associate with good, right? Or the work that you did is associated as being something transformative or really differential to what people get today. And they look back at it that way, despite maybe some hard conversations or some pushing along the way, which if you don't create some of those big changes, maybe all they remember is, I just had to work really hard with that. That was what they took away, instead of, gosh, we accomplished this thing together, right? Would be more of a,
we didn't know we could do. It's that resilience.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that. So let's go back to just, you talk a lot about health and about, I think it's so important. And I think leaders that don't have what I call energy rituals, right? To manage your own energy well, meaning taking care of yourself so you can show up with the right energy for the battles and the climbs you're going to do with your team or your family. What are those energy rituals, habits that really help you manage your leadership energy better? What do you do on a daily, weekly basis?
I take a walk at lunchtime. At work, harder in the wintertime, of course, summertime, but sometimes it's hard to make the time, but it's a little bit of a mind clearing exercise. It's exercise in itself, but it's a time to just kind of flush out the morning and think about how you could still make the day good. Maybe if it didn't start that way. Some people probably experience this, like sometimes it happens in the shower for me, like where it's like, it just all comes together and it's clear, right? And if you can just have that clarity of mind of, okay, I couldn't figure out how all these things fit together. And then all of a sudden, if I just let my mind relax, I can figure out what the steps are and how I want to approach something, a conversation or a task. It helps me do that. I guess that's one of them for sure. And the other one's just, just in general exercise. So I find that's a thing that makes me feel like better about myself, just in general, is going back to that every.
I've talked a lot on the podcast about my meditation practice, and I talk to leaders a lot about, and they're like, I just can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I can't sit still. And what I tell them is, what you're talking about to me is your way of meditating. Meditating doesn't have to be you sit cross-legged and hum and, close your eyes and put your fingers out like this. It's the moments, right? Where your mind can clear. It's the exercise. If I used to call what I called active meditation on a run. I get my best ideas when I was on a trail because I didn't have to think about anything else. Just one foot in front of the other. That's meditation. And so I like to always tell leaders, like, let's release the pressure of how you meditate. And what you're talking about, those walks, those clarity, those are meditative actions that you can do to manage your own energy.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be an expert in something. So if there's leaders listening, right, that are going through the tough time right now, or, like, what, if you were sitting in front of them at coffee, right, you're sitting and having coffee, what would you tell them if they're in the middle of uncertainty or maybe personal or professional things going on, a job loss, a health issue? What would you tell them if they were sitting across from you?
It's funny because I meet people like this often that are going through some type of life event. I think what we said earlier is that if you can just get to hindsight is certainly one thing that makes sense to tell them, but probably another one that I would say is your attitude makes a difference every day. How you speak to yourself, what your attitude is towards yourself that day, what it is to others, what it is to your business. Attitude's infectious, and are you going to be a disease or are you going to be a miracle drug that day is really what I might say to people. Maybe it should go on a sign someplace.
I'll ask you that question in a second, because that might be it. Are you going to be a disease or a miracle drug? And you have the choice. No matter what is happening to you, in every moment, you have the choice. And not every moment's going to be rainbows and unicorns and, all of that. Yeah. But I think as leaders, our resilience comes from that choice we make when we walk into the office every day.
Yeah. I mean, people have written books about that, where if you just get up and say, I'm going to make it, it's going to be a great day, that can change your attitude. And I think it can. I mean, mindset means a lot. Like if you let yourself spiral down and get into this place where, you just don't feel good about yourself, nothing is going to work. So you have to find the ways that you get yourself out of that, whether that's routines or talking to people. I think that being around other people and, for those in job transition out there or have gone through this, they probably echo this, but if you put your energy into learning while you're going through that instead of finding a job, oh my God, is it a rewarding experience instead of a downer one, right? Yeah. Where you're dreading the fact that you don't have a job, but instead you're like, I get this chance to learn from all these people I meet, and oh my God, I learned so much. I didn't have a job. If it paid, I would have kept doing it. It was fantastic.
I love it. Put your energy into learning. It's I was at an entrepreneur conference and A-Rod was speaking, and someone asked him a question. How do you manage what are those things you do? And he said, I wake up every morning before my eyes open. He said, today's going to be the luckiest day of my life. It's a choice. It's a choice before you check your email, right? Or the chaos of the morning with kids happens. Or he's saying, today's going to be the luckiest day of my life. He doesn't know how or why. And it's really stuck with me, the simplicity of something like that, but the science behind how that changes your brain, right, for the day. So I think it's a beautiful reminder for all of us. Okay, so before I let you go, I want to go through the bonus round, and I think you may have already answered one of the questions, but we'll see.
Okay.
So we're creating a Spotify playlist for all of the leaders, right, who have been on this podcast. So what's your go-to song when you need that energy boost, when you're having a day, you're out on your lunch walk? What's your go-to song to raise your energy?
So there's a story with this, but it's by a band called Tub Thumping, and it's called Chumbawamba. And it's that one that's, if I get knocked down, I'll get up again.
Right now, I know exactly.
I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a good singer, but the story that goes with this is at the end of my term working with the Canadian business and General Mills, we had an end of the year meeting, and all of the business leaders by function had to have walk-up music before we did our presentation. And, I just went through 2 years of leading the supply chain team that was constantly beat down and blamed for everything going wrong, right? Because we couldn't get materials and we couldn't produce product. So the whole room kind of erupted with, that is the absolute perfect song for
you get knocked down and you get up again.
Yep, and you get up again. But it's carried forward from there, and it, just as we talked about before, can be a little bit uplifting. I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm going to go on, move forward.
I love it. What's a book or podcast that changed your perspective?
The book called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, I think is the one. But it talks about leaders who bring out the best in others instead of being a diminisher, that either accidental or intentional diminisher that kind of takes focus away from others and puts it on them. Really, really good read. Really a lot of great lessons in how to show up in a way that accelerates instead of, takes away.
Yeah, I love it. And then the last question is, I'm going to give you a billboard on 394 going into downtown. And every executive going to and from work is going to see this billboard. What would you put on it?
Yeah, it is probably what I said earlier. It's a little flowery, but your attitude makes a difference every day would be what I put up there. I really think that matters, and it can be spread. One person can make a difference just by bringing that level of energy. Yeah. Could be either that or just create a culture of followers, not a culture of fear. Might be another thing I'd put up there. If you get people that you inspire, you care about, you care first and you ask second, they'll go to fight with you, and you'll win a lot more often than you would otherwise.
You'll move mountains. Yeah. And many of us have experienced that in our careers, right? Teams that have done things that they should have never been able to do because we figured out how to light that fire, right? And really motivate and inspire them.
For sure.
So it's beautiful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing so openly.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show. I loved it. I hope it's helpful to the folks listening, and inspiring to those that needed inspiration.
Yeah, it absolutely will be. And that's really, to those listening, that's the purpose of this, is to bring leaders on that we've all been through, right? A lot of stuff. And we've gotten out the other side. And sometimes we just need to hear it from someone who's on the other side when we're in the middle to say, okay, I can do this. So I'm assuming you're open. If people connect with you, we'll put your LinkedIn and things like that on the show notes in case there's other people that want to have coffee and want to get on your calendar to share their.
We connected. I welcome connections like that, Jaime. Okay. So yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much for being here, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about what you discover once you're there. Here on View from the Top, we explore the stories, the setbacks, and the inner work that redefine what success really means. If this episode resonated with you, I'd encourage you to share it with someone who might need it right now. And to stay connected, make sure and subscribe so you get notified when we release new episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, or visit my website at jamietates.com. All of the links are in the show notes. Thank you for listening to View from the Top. We'll see you at the top and beyond.